So a startling investigation by Viewfinder has found that close to 1,000 police officers accused of rape since 2012 are still occupying their post, and not much has been done in terms of disciplinary processes. And what the report also found was there was one incident where a police officer, 52 years old, was accused of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old. A 15-year-old. Daneel Knoetze, now joining us on the line, Viewfinder's investigative reporter. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Some of those cases that you're looking into, quite shocking here, including the one Sipo.
Indeed. So Sipo is a pseudonym that we used for the police officer. We made an 11th hour decision not to name him. This is a police officer who was on patrol, presumably by himself, on a quiet stretch of the highway outside Piet Retief in Mpumalanga. He opportunistically arrested a teenage girl who was waiting for a taxi to take her home after school, threatened her with the most awful things, and then proceeded to rape her and then drop her back off. This is just one of the case studies that we've highlighted out of this database of nearly 1,000 rapes committed by police or allegedly committed by police officers since 2012. And what we found looking at that case data is both instances of terrible abuses of authority and of power by police officers who were on duty, leveraged the power and the privilege of their position as a utility to help them commit these crimes, and then routinely got away with it. And our focus has really been on why. Why are police officers not being held accountable, not just for these crimes, but for other violent crimes and misuses of force in South Africa, of which rapes are just the tip of the iceberg and probably the worst instances that we've come across. And what we found really is that police discipline management systemically fails to deal with these offenders in an environment where the criminal justice system, we know, finds it very difficult to convict men of rape in this country and to put them behind bars. And so the failure of police discipline management specifically means that these police officers are recycled back into the communities they are meant to be serving.
Yeah, and I see that the report also indicating that around 38 women were allegedly raped while in custody. 26 victims were minors.
Indeed. So what you're referencing there is results from a sampling that we did. We looked at 220 rape allegations against on-duty police officers. We accessed the data out of IPID, which is the police watchdog that registers these cases for these cases, and we looked at the complaint descriptions, which are paragraphs usually taken from victims themselves to give a summary of their complaint. And what we found quite rightly is that close to 40 of them were rapes that occurred in custody within the sample, and the number that you just mentioned, children as well, minors. So it just shows us, again, that this abuse of power, which is very much the thread that runs through assault cases with police, extends to these rape allegations against on-duty officers. And that's really the ultimate or the pinnacle of what this abuse of power within the police service amounts to when combined with gender-based violence and rape, which is systemic, of course, in this country.
Is it clear what the hurdles are when it comes to the criminal investigation into these allegations, but also the disciplinary processes itself?
Absolutely. So a large part of our investigation has been about speaking, polling, on the record and off the record with the investigators that deal with these cases. What they've said to us is that rape cases, relative to the number of assault cases that they have to deal with, is small. There's a small number, even though it sounds like a lot, 1,000 over the 7 or 8 year period. So they did not have a capacity shortfall in terms of the investigators. Where the bottlenecks are is, of course, in technical reports, DNA reports from the forensic science laboratories. Police Minister Becky Cele mentioned that there was more than 200 cases on the backlog of these laboratories. earlier this year. So that's an issue for the criminal justice system as a whole, and gender-based violence cases in particular. That's the one bottleneck, and that gives rise to a statistic that we've mentioned there. That from our reading of the data, 97% of police officers that are accused of rape do not actually get imprisoned. But our real focus is on the police as an institution itself. Even though the criminal outcomes are very low, it does not mean that police officers need to necessarily remain on duty. There are very clear strictures and departmental guidelines for discipline within the police service, especially if findings have been made by police watchdog investigators against their officers.
Yeah.
We can expect police management to enforce, or we should expect police management to enforce these findings, enact swift discipline, and sanction officers appropriately. In the case of rape, I think the sanction should be dismissal. And that rarely happens. Routinely, these cases do not lead to police officers being dismissed. And so even though there's prima facie evidence against them, they continue on the job. That is the conclusion of what the data has told us.
Daneel Knoetze, thank you so much for your time. Actually, one of the incidents is about a police officer who was allegedly checking up on a gender-based violence complainant and then allegedly went on to rape her.